In a minute, an elderly drum beat clinic with my old-fashioned way of dealing with loops versus Logic's all-new, is it called Beat Muncher? This is a small enterprise, and the beating heart of it is this YouTube channel. So if you can subscribe, I would really appreciate it, alongside telling all your friends and your family. Right, so dealing with loops, the old and the new way. So it's all got a slightly different look to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a beat out of the drum session from the Porn Funk video we made, linked below. First of all, just do a quick mix and then find a sweet spot. What I'm going to then do is make sure that the loop starts absolutely at 1 bar and beat, and then make it tight as a duck's arse underwater there and at the other end. And then there's this function in Logic where you can get it to work out the tempo by selecting the cycle range and hitting this clever little monkey here. Apply project tempo to region and locators. I'm not a fan of correcting everything to the grid. For me, it's about getting the backbeat bang on, and then all of the other stuff in between is the groove, and I don't want to mess around with that. So what we're going to do is simply slice it into those important backbeat essentials and make sure they're bang on. And what I'm working it to is, if it's the snare drum, I'll cut to the snare drum track, and if it's the kick drum, I'll cut it to the kick drum track. We don't need to use anything like flex time or anything like that. All we need to do is go to the events and then quantize them to eighth notes. These will leave little gaps, and all we need to do is just don't roll forward, always roll back so you don't get flams, and a little crossfade so you don't get clicks. Few little corrections here and there, but it can be like, you know, pulling a thread in a shirt and suddenly you're left with no shirt. Okay, so let's bounce that. I like the mix as a basic rough kind of thing. So bounce tracks in place, and then I'll keep the original cuts so I can go back in if I'm not satisfied. Pull those to the bottom, and that's our working multi-track all tightened up to the click. And then I think it's really wise to check in Logic with it in loop mode, not cycle mode, because they're not the same. The timing isn't quite the same on those. But this feels really good. So I'm going to just take the very digital top end off, take the useless bottom end off, and just a smudge of compression. Flatten it and bring it all together. But I want to work with a loop that is in its raw state, not too produced sounding. Okay, so let's bounce all that and hide all of those tracks, but they're there to go back into if we want to. And here's our loop. Now I'm going to copy it. And the reason for that is I'm going to slice it. And because we brought the backbeat, I can simply cut it at those strict musical points. And what I'm basically going to do is slice it in breakbeat order, and the reasons for that will become apparent when I play it back and create what I'd call a loop performance space, if you will. I'm going to throw that into the sampler and keep it on all the white notes. So that's our first set of samples, but we don't end there. What I'm going to do is duplicate the original again, but this time chop it from right to left. And this is because we're going to put these into the sampler and reverse them. But we still haven't finished there. We're still going to give it more love. And that is to chop the individual eighth notes or the backbeat notes. So I have almost like individual drums that I can hit. I'm going to do a little fade out there. And I'm just going to make those chromatic down there. I'm going to run out of space, so I'm making all of the samples chromatic now so that I've got reasonable space on my keyboard. Just one more step, and that is to take our individual drum hits and duplicate them up the top end of the keyboard. I've sped up the sampler so I can hear the kind of timbral things that I'm going to be working with, and I'm going to create stutter edits, but without an edit, actually just by creating different loop speeds. And some of these loops are so fast that they actually create what we call frequency modulation, so a new tone of its own. And I've got a nice surprise for you later with those. Oh, that sounds so cool. Although I'm a better drum programmer than I am a piano player first. So my means of communicating is always going to be through the keyboard. So the reason why I've gone through that massive faff that you see there is to create almost like a performance environment that I feel is inspiring. We have the original segments all chopped up, so I can literally play. And then I've got the single hits, so I can, I guess, embellish on the beat. Then I've got the strips that are reversed. So let's have a go at putting something together in this old school way of working. Weird thing about Logic is it doesn't cycle correctly, so you won't get an accurately loop. So what I do is put it into loop mode and just let it run. Yeah, so it's a little bit faster if it's flamming, so we need to slow that down. That's it, bang on. And then basically, I don't know if I still have the chops to work at this tempo, and this is actually a bit slow for where the drum and basses are at the moment, but I think it's probably the limits of where I can take that loop to. Now, obviously, it's lacking in the bottom end. So what I'm going to do is just use the original, but I'm just going to take the top end off, boost the bottom. Right, so that's the kind of old man way of going about stuff. Should we have a look at this new feature in Logic called Beat Muncher or something? Let's go. So it's just a little skip there. The way that Logic cycles is not quite right. So let's bring on board, I believe it's called Beat Breaker. And there we go there. And it always seems to be going. Let's make it 8 beats in length. Okay, so what we've got is we've got 3 different styles of beat breaking capabilities. Lots of presets here and also here. So basically you've got your controls here, but also your ability here to change what part of the sample it's accessing. So let's have a look at this. But you've also got the speed at which it plays back. And you can curve it. Put repeats in. And you can also adjust the volume. And there's some slope settings. And you can move around the slices here. I think when this is quite useful is when you've got maybe not 100% mix on. So let's see what this sounds like. And I guess for it to seem a little bit like that collaboration with Isotope and BT, I forget the name of it, you can actually jam with the different patterns. So I believe we've got... I do find it rather annoying that it's rotating all the time. It makes you feel like you've got to hurry. Anyway, let's have a play with this. So I think it's a lot of fun. For me, there was this period in the 1990s, late 1990s and early noughties, when music that you heard on telly and in restaurants and stuff sounded like it had been written by graphic designers, and I've got nothing against graphic designers. If you look at stuff like Lemon Jelly and stuff, they were actually graphic designers. And there was a detail to it that was very, in my humble opinion, very Photoshoppy, in the sense of it was stuff that was programmed and not performed. And I think that this doesn't really suit my way of working, which is much more working with the keyboard. However, I think what could be quite fun is to mix the two techniques and see what we can do with that. Something else I did is, whilst I was recording, doing all of those edits and stutter beats and stuff, I actually went and grabbed some little bits from that recording to create some basses. And I've got these 2 different basses in stereo, and I think it would be fun to have a bit of a jam. Now, if that's not dad dance, I don't know what is. If you want to have a little rummage around this session, join the murder or the membership at thecrowhillcompany.com and venture into the hub, and it's full of resources and little tests that I've been doing and the team's been doing, including this session or indeed just the raw assets, so that you can have fun with whatever sampler or DAW that you're working with. Thanks so much for watching till the end. And as I said before, if you can subscribe, that really does help us out. But also, if you ding the bell, it will mean that you're notified the next time we put something up. Lots of exciting things in the pipeline. One of those, always much appreciated. Join the crowhillcompany.com, link in the video description down below. Visit the hub to get the study pack from today's clinics and indeed a whole bunch of resources that we've put in there. See you soon.